number 2, and we will be reflecting on patriarchs.
So the first question was, what does it reveal about like God? The passage that we read in the presentation. So, and in the passage that they read, it was about God asking Abraham to sacrifice his son to show his love for God. But then God's like swooping in and saying, no, like you've shown your love for me, like you don't have to do this. And I think what it reveals about God is that God always has a plan for us. And even though like sometimes we kind of question like what that plan is, he knows like what is gonna come from that, and like he knows the right pathway, and even though we don't always take it, he knows that like what it should be. And so I think that it just shows like how all-powerful and all-knowing that God is himself, and how not even that, and he's not asking us to put ourselves out there for him for no reason. Like he always has an actual reason that things happen. Like he asked Abraham to sacrifice his son, but it wasn't just because God was like, oh, I just want you to sacrifice your son today. It was because God had a reason for that, because he wanted Abraham to show his love so that God could reward him by making him like the father of all the nations. And I think that that's what it shows about God, is that he doesn't do anything arbitrarily. He does everything in our best interest, and so that we can know him better, and so that we can show our love for him, and so that he can show his love for us.
And the second question is, what does this passage reveal about ourselves? Well, what I believe is that this passage reveals the fact that we are innately like Abraham, or we have that potential to be like Abraham. We have the potential to trust in God fully and completely, regardless of how much it will hurt our earthly beings or our earthly selves. Like in the passage when Abraham is sacrificing something that is so important to him, his only son, or his son, and not his only son, but his son, and he's sacrificing that for the Lord. And he's taking that risk even though he knows how much it will hurt him and ultimately will change his life forever, but he's taking that risk because the Lord told him to do so. And I believe that that passage reveals that all of us, since we are made like not only in the Lord's image, but we are made like in the image of Abraham as well, because we all like it. We all have the potential to be like Abraham, and we all have that potential to trust that the Lord has that ability to give us what we need and everything that we do need. So in the end, when we need our own sacrifice, or when we need that personal extra strength that is necessary for us to get through the day, it's possible that we can get that because we have been given that since birth, since creation. We are given this ability to trust the Lord, and we have to use that. And so often we don't. So often we trust our own instincts, and we find that the Lord was right, and that we need to trust in what he says and what he's doing for us. And in that ability, or in our ability to find that about ourselves and to really discover that about ourselves, will we only grow in Christ further and better.
The third question is, how do we grow in God's love? How do we respond to God's love? And we kind of decided that it would be best to break it up into how do we do that worldly and how do we do that personally. Personally, we can respond to God's love by always trusting in him and always praying to him and making sure that we set a time in our day, every day, to pray to him and to thank him for everything we have and everything we are doing. It's also important for us to continually strengthen our faith, and we can do that by going on retreats or just listening to Christian music instead of the radio one day. And Marisa's going to talk about worldly.
So overall, like as a nation, we can respond to God's love and show him love by trusting in him as a nation and by showing him this trust. And in order to do that, we have to essentially trust each other, and trusting each other in those relationships we have with each other will lead us towards a better relationship with God and towards trust with God. And like in the story, Abraham fully was like willing to place his trust in God, and he was willing to kill his son for God. And like we have to think ourselves, will we go that far as to like trust God so much that we would sacrifice something so great for us? And so as a nation, we can respond to his love by trusting each other and by showing each other this, like establishing this foundation of trust.
I think it's important to note too, like when you look at the story, like Abraham, obviously, when God asked him to sacrifice his son, Abraham could have easily been really mad and like offended that God did that, and like said no, and like responded to God's love in like a negative way, because that that asking him to do that was really
a huge sacrifice. It's a huge thing.
Yeah. So we can be like Abraham in just kind of responding to God's love by accepting that, and instead of like questioning it like he could have done, we can just kind of follow his plan, because like I said before, like we trust
It was such a testimony to how much Abraham did believe in Jesus Christ and God, and by being willing to sacrifice his son and taking that trust in God is testimony to anything that anybody could ever argue against.
And ultimately, that trust is what we will need to grow in Christ. Thank you.
We did use a trash can to record this.
Adios. All right.
Part 2.
Hello, this is group 2, and we will be talking about Revelation.
So again, the first question is, how does God reveal himself through Revelation? And the whole book of Revelation, like we learned about in the presentation, is about preparing for like the apocalypse, but the actual one, like that the Bible describes, and like I guess not being afraid of that. And so what we learned about God through Revelation is that kind of like what we learned in the Patriarchs, but that he always has a plan for us, and that we need to like around ourselves, like we need to trust in this plan, but about God especially, he's so all-knowing and so all-powerful that like us questioning him is like irrelevant almost, because it's like humans questioning God, and like it doesn't get us anywhere. And so basically it's about God being there for us always, and like God's ability to take something that seems so frightening and that like kind of we're like inherently afraid of, just because everybody, I don't know, you see all these movies about it and it describes it like really terribly, and obviously it's still frightening, but then God taking that like source of fear and molding it into like a source of love, because at the end, like when we go through like the apocalypse or whatever happens, like what Revelation describes, we get to be with him in heaven, and we get to have that afterlife with him. And so he exploits that fear that we have and turns it into something that we can look forward to and love. And it's a testament to his ability to do that, to take things that are frightening and kind of take power over them, because he is so all-powerful in our lives.
I think it's really important to note that in Revelations, it brings out a good point that like no matter, you don't know what's going to happen today, tomorrow, next week, in a year, and you have to have complete faith. Us four are about to go off to college with the rest of our senior class, and we have to truly trust in him and to believe that whatever we are meant to do is going to happen. We are going to end up where we need to be, and that's a good lesson to be reminded of.
Exactly. And the second question is, what does this passage, or what does this reveal about ourselves? And what I really think this actually reveals about ourselves is the fact that we as people need to live each day to its fullest extent. We need to really utilize the fact that we have been given life, and that we have been given this opportunity to not only exist and breathe, but to live, like, and truly live. And that will only happen like if we live for God and if we live for Christ. And it's really a blessing that we have this opportunity to live out our lives, like not only for the sake of existence, but for the sake of the Lord and for what we are meant to do, and that we have been given a purpose and something to fulfill. And it reveals about ourselves that it's necessary for us to take this risk and to take the risk of life, to take the risk to live. And that's something that's so important and that's so pivotal to our own existence, is that we need to take that risk and live every day to its fullest extent, and live every day like not only for ourselves, but for the Lord and for Christ and for trusting in him. And we need to realize the fact that this book of Revelations is looked upon as so scary and so frightening because of its apocalypse and because it leads ultimately to death. But we cannot forget that in death we will find light, because we will find heaven and we will be with the Lord. And that's something that we cannot forget always. We need to understand the fact that with this life that we have been given, we need to live it to the fullest extent. And in death we will find light. And that the whole point of the apocalypse is not to rain terror on our lives or to rain terror upon the people, but it is to bring us to salvation and to bring us to what we truly deserve, and that's Jesus Christ, because he sacrificed himself for us, and we need to live our lives like he sacrificed. Like, we need to live our lives like someone died for them, because someone did.
The third and final question is, how do we respond to God's love through the book of Revelations? And once again, we do that through keeping our faith and keeping our trust in him. And this book, like Morgan mentioned, is very scary, and it talks about things that, human beings as a whole don't want to imagine because it's scary. Human beings are fearful, and that is a great quality in aspects of learning to grow for yourself, and it pushes us to continue to renew our faith, because if we're not scared of anything, why believe in anything?
Like, going off what Catie said, like, if we're not scared, we don't have to worry. Like, we believe in God, we trust him, and that trust that we've established with him will protect us. We don't have to fear tomorrow, what tomorrow brings. And each day is a new day, and each day is a day that we should live for God. And sometimes, you have bad days. You have a day where everything doesn't go right, you fail a test or something. But when you go to bed, like you put your trust in God. You say, God, stay with me today, stay with me tomorrow, be with me always, because that trust in him that you have is so, so important. And it keeps you and him in a relationship, and in that relationship he'll protect you, and he always protects you.
Thank you very much. All right, I hope you enjoyed this.
Featuring trash can.